Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Ding. It's been a while, but we've got some good stuff for you today because today I am joined by my awesome co-host, Dr. Henry Fox.
Oh, thank you.
And we are going to be going over the latest patch for The Division. So this is patch number 1.6, correct, Fox?
Yep.
And there's been a couple of changes since the last patch, as you would expect. Just before we dive right into it, Fox, overall, what's sort of your core feelings when you heard about this patch coming out? What were you expecting? What were you hoping would be present in this?
I wasn't expecting anything because I had no idea it was coming out. That's the level of attention that most people have been giving The Division.
It's just really almost like, oh, that's nice. They've done something, sort of thing.
Yeah, and when I took a look at the patch when I logged in very recently, couldn't even find a match actually when I wanted to do it. They brought out some 8 versus 8 PvP stuff in the latest patch. I'd like to say how it is, but I'm afraid there's no way for me to play it because no one else is playing it.
The patch itself has come out in January. At the time of recording, that's a couple of months ago, and it's already the community seems to have died down when it comes to the interest in this game. What's going on here? What's wrong with The Division? I didn't think. I thought with this new patch we'd see a new investment of players. Is there too many other games on at the moment? Was the patch just underwhelming? Like what went down? What did Ubisoft do wrong with this title?
Where did they go wrong with The Division? I think the game had a lot of promise. It was hyped up for quite a while. It looked cool, new, cool third-person modern military shooter with cool fancy gadgets and stuff in a mid-apocalyptic world. And that seemed interesting, but for some reason it didn't attract the initial player base it was looking for, and it all went downhill from there.
I mean, that could have been for a range of factors. It could have just been bad timing on the behalf of their release. And yeah, it just didn't stick. I know I had a lot of friends who were really invested in this game for a short period of time. So maybe the game just didn't have the holding power that it needed to maintain that audience. That it was good, but it didn't have the longevity that it needed to sort of maintain an MMO.
Yeah, it's as far as MMOs go, it hasn't been massively multiplayer for a while. I remember your brother was into it for a little while.
Yeah, my brother was playing it for a while. Whizpants, his screen name. He was into it.
And his initial thoughts on it was that he enjoyed the concept of the open PvP Dark Zone, but it wasn't enough for him, especially with what he considered to be a lackluster story. So the only thing it really held for him was at the time an underwhelming Dark Zone. It didn't really fulfill the role that people thought it was going to. It didn't seem like you could look at someone and decide whether or not to trust them like they promised. They promised true open PvP, and instead we got a system where people were either not a problem to you or just such a problem to you that it didn't matter. Like,
there wasn't much middle ground. And I mean, it's a little bit tricky because it is that setting of it is a modern or slightly postmodern, realistic shooter. And to have that middle ground, you do need to have a certain aspect of bullet sponginess when it comes to those PvP interactions. But that's just not the case. It's just that people aren't a bother to you, or the interactions are just so short and people just die so quickly that it just feels quite underwhelming in the space of the rest of the game.
Jeez, it was particularly interesting for that because, like, as an RPG, bullet sponginess is just how RPGs go. Enemies are going to take a lot of shots so that your stats on your weapons and your gear matter. But when it came to the PvP, which was something that it was supposed to be a major selling point of the game, players would pretty much go down instantly. So that wasn't very fun. It wasn't like you got into a quick fight. But then once you, say if you did instantly backstab someone, and you went rogue.
Yeah.
The punishment if you died was so severe that nobody wanted to go rogue, and that was a major mistake at such a critical point of the game, because that was when it was going to hook its key players for
Yeah.
that kind of retention.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they weren't interested in going rogue because
No.
that cost them so much. They would lose too many hours of experience, too many hours of Dark Zone credits, too much gear.
Yeah.
Too much was lost from going rogue, so no one
And I
did it.
guess I can assume that they did that to try and just find well, what they believed was trying to find some balance in that you just didn't want everyone going around just in a murder fest killing each other, but at the same time you wanted some people to be doing it, but I guess they just weren't able to find that balance because by its nature, you have, if you look at other games that are sort of like an arena survival, well, in this case, a huge arena survival style game where it is player versus player, and you do have the option to work together, or you can backstab your teammates, or and there is that whole conflict of can I trust these people, which players are good, which players are bad, which players are going rogue. If you look at other games that have worked with mechanics like that, such as PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale, which is just coming out right now, they seem to draw that line very fine.
PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Sorry, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Before it was his Arma 3 mod,
Yeah,
PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale.
yeah.
They seem to work very well when they do have a mix of working together and with your friends, I guess, and also players versing each other at the same time.
Now, I think Ubisoft cottoned on to that after their initial failure with the Dark Zone in the Division. And they introduced a new mode called Survival, which...
This is the latest patch.
No, not the latest patch. It was a few patches ago now.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because it seems it's already died down and not many people are interested in it. Usually because of games like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds have taken up this slot, because what it did was your gear, your level, your story progression, none of that mattered anymore if you wanted to play this survival mode. You would just queue up for it, and it would drop you and however many other players into a place with basic gear in a blizzard with a timer on yourself in the form of an infection. And you could play PvP or PvE versions, and the PvP one was very popular because it brought in that sense of, can I trust this person I've come across, or should I just kill them and take their stuff because I'm in a blizzard, it's cold, I need clothes, or they have a weapon, or they have medication that I need. So that worked very well, and it seemed to be one of the best sort of battle royale games available. But people seem to have migrated from that now onto stuff like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Right. All right. Well, I've got some more specific questions about some of the content in the patch. So this isn't any real major changes aside from the game types. There's no gameplay changes. Are there any like new weapons or new abilities that come with this?
No.
So fundamentally, it is the same game, just with some slightly different rules.
Yeah, they're just adding in different modes for people to play, like that survival mode, which I did enjoy, but it's unfortunately not as popular as games like Battlegrounds. Just before that, they added in some little scenario adventure things for players to run through and do quick missions that would sort of like randomly generated dungeons in a way. And it was nice to receive that content. It's always nice to receive the content, but it's just not retaining players. And most recently, in January, they added in these 8 vs 8 Last Stand PvP games. Which, like I said, I haven't been able to experience because just not enough people are playing the Division at the moment. There are games, MMOs this old, that are not suffering this much, and I'm sure there are quite a few factors that
Yeah.
would be influencing that.
How much more content has Ubisoft committed to this game? Like, do they have any more expansions promised as part of the season pass, or is this sort of just what they feel like releasing now?
I don't actually know. Let me check that.
Chopper is inbound.
Okay, so this is the last of the season. This is the last pack.
This is last pack. Oh, I guess it says last
Yeah.
stand.
This is the last expansion that the season pass will get you.
That's honestly a shame, but I don't think there's anywhere from this that they can progress.
We're really looking at a dying MMO here.
We are looking at a dying MMO. And that's a shame because I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the dungeons. I enjoyed playing it with a few friends who played it for the short time they did.
Do you think Ubisoft should have really not tried to go down the MMO route here and just tried to make a really immersive, great campaign single player game, and it would have fared better?
I think, especially with the Tom Clancy name on the title, it would have fared quite well as a short-lived single-player or multiplayer story-driven game. But they wanted to create an MMO experience, and I don't think that has been in its best interests as a game.
No. And I mean, I've been pretty vocal on this in the past, in our past podcasts. I think that the MMO component of games makes it a lot difficult to sort of tell that immersive story. I mean, yes, there's the lore, yes, there's those moments, but there's just different elements and different ways you play an RPG, an MMO RPG. I mean, you might have a different opinion because you've played a lot more MMOs than me, but I think that you put a lot of restrictions on how you can tell stories when you do make an MMO, just because your story has to work within the framework of how the MMO genre and how the MMO engine actually works.
That's actually particularly interesting when you think of a game like Project Titan, which turned into Overwatch. That was
Really?
originally going to be an MMO codenamed Titan, which is why
Right.
their story is so rich and why their characters are so developed, because they expected this to be a massive world that the character would play in. And instead, because they saw that an MMO would not work for it, especially with it competing with their own product. So they changed genre, they changed tack completely in how it's played, and it has succeeded very well as a multiplayer shooter. Which is something that I think maybe the Division as a multiplayer shooter would have been more successful than what it is now.
But I just think that such a big character of the game is the setting. It is the larger story. It's the story world, you know? Like, it is so well done, it's so well crafted. And then a lot of it is just you're grinding through these bits. You're just killing dudes for the sake of getting the best loot or the best gear. And I think that it's hard to build a great story around that, which is, once again, why I agree that I think that maybe if it was in a different format, you could have that story really shine through.
Yeah, and look, credit where it's due, they did try to go for a rich story. They had the Echo things, which we talked about in our prototype podcast. Maybe people
we did.
Maybe people will hear that one day, maybe not. But we discussed their how they hid lore around the world. They hid echo things where it would reconstruct scenes, and you could walk through it and see this section of the history and the story of the game. And so they definitely tried really hard for this rich world for you to explore. But in the end,
if this world is empty, it's gonna fit. You know, it relies on having that player base. It relies on having a group of people who are going to play this game with you, because it is an MMO. You know?
I 100% agree. A massively multiplayer online game can't function without a massive amount of people to play with.
So you do just end up running around what seems like these empty worlds.
Yeah, when I play it on occasion, I really don't have much to do since I can't get into the survival mode to play that, which is an interesting mode. I can't play the 8v8 PvP. All I have left is to run around in the single player. Well, you can invite other players into it. I've got no one to play with. I can run around in the story world, grinding out gear, or I can run around the Dark Zone, which is open to lots of players. There's no one in there for me to fear or to work with. So I can't go to the more difficult places, got no one to work with, and I can't have experiences with other players because there's no one to be hostile towards me or to spontaneously work with and have an experience. It's very lonely. It's just, at the moment, it's a lonely PvE game, even in the PvP area.
There's a lot of these guys, but if you use cover, you should be able to pick them off without making yourself a target.
Fox, I think that's just about all we can really say for this particular patch. How many hats would you reevaluate? I think your first hat rating for... What was your first hat rating for?
I don't think we had our hat rating back in our prototype.
Okay.
No.
How many hats do you give Tom Clancy The Division 1.6?
Last stand, are there any hats to give if you haven't been able to wear them?
Really?
Because what can I do? I can't judge the current content without being able to experience it. And bringing up hats for a moment, not enough hats in the Division. They added a few over the years with the different patches, but there's just still a complete lack of hats, but an immense amount of recolored beanies. But I digress. When it comes to giving this game a hat rating, as a game, as an experience, playing through the story, I'd easily give it 3.5 to 4 hats. But as an MMO, I don't think it's fulfilling its job anymore.
Right. You guys have heard it. That's a pretty harsh review from Fox there. The Division Last Stand, the third expansion of the set. It's a dying MMO. It had some good points, but unfortunately overshadowed by the lack of player base, which was a result of maybe not enough longevity, we think.
Yeah, I like, when it comes to this, it's no longer a review from me. It's more of an observation of just the state of the game. If you were to talk to me about it a lot earlier, I would have had a lot more to say about it. There would have been a lot more people talking about it. But the Division, for now, I think it's starting to pass away, and perhaps it's for the best for it, so that it's a fond memory instead of something that's constantly just trying to hold on.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. My name is Darth Kcaj. I'm joined by the fantastic Dr. Fox. Thank you so much, Fox, for sharing your expertise with us today. Really enjoy doing this with you, and can't wait till we look at our next MMO. Any ideas on what might be next on the list?
I enjoy doing these with you too, man. I think the next one we should cover is Final Fantasy XIV, a realm reborn. I know you thought it was dead, but you thought it was cancelled.
Back, baby.
But they brought it back. But the new expansion is coming out very soon, so I will be checking that out, and we will definitely have to have my girlfriend on because she plays a lot of it, and so she'll be able to give a much more in-depth review. So we'll have to have her on with me after. Look, I promised everybody I wouldn't play Final Fantasy XIV until they brought Red Mage in. And this next expansion, Red Mage is coming in. So
it's on the table.
I've got years of content to go through. So I can give what I see when it comes out, but the person who will give the most up-to-date review on how things are going is Vespora.
Very excited for that. It'll be great to have her on. All right, thanks for listening, guys. Tune in next time to Ding.